All right. Hello, everyone. I have one person watching. I see 3 comments there. I suspect I know who some of these comments are from. Well, let me take a look and see who this is. It's Jay Bones. Jay Bones, man, hey man, I appreciate the support. You're supporting all my stuff here. I appreciate this. I was gonna share this over on my original channel, but there are some anti NFL folks over there. So I don't know if I will. You know what? Since it's Tom Brady and Tom Brady toward the end, because of his political affiliations, maybe I will share this over there because I know that some people um, were not happy with who Tom supported in terms of presidential politics. So I'm going to share this over on my original channel, and then I'll jump in. Abdul Gaines, by the way, everyone, Lloyd Carr, before Abdul defected to that team down south, Lloyd Carr was his favorite Michigan football coach. Let me see. I know there are a lot of anti-NFL folks over here. I'm doing a tribute to Tom Brady on my sports channel. Is interested. Okay, let me read this to myself. I know there are a lot of anti-NFL folks over here, but I'm doing a tribute to Tom Brady on my sports channel in case anyone is interested. Okay, so I'm going to share that. And actually, Abdul Gaines, we're going to talk about. I think a few of your favorite coaches are going to enter the discussion tonight. Lloyd Carr being one of them. I think Nick Saban's name is going to come up as well. So, Abdul Gaines, you're going to have a good time. Guys, I put together a short intro for Tom, and I'm going to play that. And then afterwards, I'll jump in and I'll try to wrap this up in about an hour. So, I'm going to play the short intro, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Yusuf Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76 Sports. First of all, please like this stream. Please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. And that goes for you as well if you're watching this on the playback. So, guys, I know arguably there are more pressing matters to talk about in terms of the Michigan football program. I know a lot of you want to talk about what's happening with Jimbo, our most likely soon-to-be former head coach. But as I told Buckeye Alex earlier today, I'll do something after I see the press conference and an official announcement is made. Because that's when, for me, it'll probably all set in and everybody will start reacting to it. So I'm going to wait until I see him stand at the podium and put on a purple and gold Vikings cap and shake hands with the owner. I think is Ziggy Wilf still the owner of the Vikings? I don't know, but that's when I'll address that. I'm kind of processing it in my mind right now. It's kind of surreal that Jimbo is most likely leaving, but I'm going to wait until the press conference and the actual announcement is made. That being said, this stream is dedicated to Tom Brady, who recently retired. Let's see who we got here. Abdul Gaines. What? Abdul Gaines. Okay, so everybody, Abdul Gaines's nickname. We have a group. His nickname is the Minister of Information because he gets stuff and he breaks stuff early. Abdul Gaines, are you trolling? He says Harbaugh has said now that he will be returning to the Wolverines this season, even though he interviewed for the Minnesota Vikings head coaching job today. Harbaugh is about the bag. He's an SOB. Okay. Now Jay Bone says Jim is gone. Definitely, he is a good coach. Love him, Jimbo. Okay, so somebody here is reporting fake news and alternative facts. But this stream is dedicated to the GOAT, Tom Brady. And I don't have a Tom Brady picture queued up here, but I'm going to fix that right away. Somebody's trolling. By the way, Jay Bones, thank you for the super sticker. I really appreciate that. The super chat is live. If anyone wants to super chat me, also my Cash App and PayPal are below the stream. I'm going to drop those in the chat right now as soon as my window opens up. If you're new coming in, please like the stream. Every little bit of engagement helps. I think Abdul Gaines was just trolling, just having fun with the situation. And why wouldn't he? He's a Buckeye fan now, so. And if Harbaugh leaves, Abdul is all but certain to win Thanksgiving 2022, which is what he's been rubbing in ever since Michigan won the game for the first time in 15 years about 2 months ago. Come on, Microsoft Word, open up. While Microsoft Word is opening up, I'm going to take a look here. Okay, so Abdul, I don't know. See, I don't know if you're trolling or what, but I'm going to wait until after the stream to fact check you. Microsoft Word is just doing whatever it's doing. It was working fine earlier. If you're new coming in, please like the stream. I'm going to get this going really, really quickly. There it is. I ask this poor computer to do so much. And it hasn't crapped out on me yet. Come on, Microsoft Word. Okay, hold on. Well, I hope everybody's having a good Wednesday. It's a hump day. We got pretty good snow here in the DMV over the weekend, but it seems to be warming up a little bit now. I'm gonna pull up one more picture, and I promise I will start. I'm gonna have to fact check Abdul Gaines. What's being said here? Okay, so what's going on, Sheep? We here. All right. So, guys, so this is this the Harbaugh news is swirling around. I'm gonna have to fact check Abdul Gaines, but this is dedicated to Tom Brady. Tom Brady just announced his retirement after a pretty dismal finish this season with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So most everybody remembers this Tom Brady with the Patriots, with the Pats. He became him and Coach Doom, the hoodie, Bill Belichick. They became public enemies number 1 and 2. But we also remember Tom like this most recently because he finished his career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's always strange when um, the faces of a franchise finish their careers with other teams. You know, Tom just did this. Brett Favre did it. Emmitt Smith left to go to the Cardinals, and then he re-signed with the Cowboys just to retire. Joe Montana um, finished out his playing days with the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's always strange to see this happen to uh, these types of athletes. But Tom finished out his career with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But it all got started in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. And so that's where I'm going to take us back to. Um, Before I do, a bit of a shameless plug. Most of you guys know that I'm working on a book. And I'm going to show this not just for marketing, but also I think a major theme of my look back on Tom Brady is going to be competition and competing and fighting your teammates for the starting spot. So this is my book project, The Engineers of Western New York Basketball Story. The link is below in the description box. And the story is about my short basketball journey in high school, which I argue helped set the stage for everything I did afterwards. I'm talking about my science career, but sports teach you a lot when you compete and when you participate in them. When you participate in them. So this link is below. And a part of my story is learning how to compete. You know, when you become a part of a team, whether it's a football team, a basketball team, a baseball team, a hockey team, a soccer team, whatever, do you join the team and wait your turn in terms of your mentality? Or do you join the team and expect to start right away? Do you get on and wait your turn and learn? Or do you automatically and quickly start challenging the veterans for time on the field? So just keep those questions in mind as I go through this. I have some notes here. But Tom is originally from California, Northern California, the Bay Area, I believe. And he grew up watching Joe Montana. And I think before Tom's career, I think many of us thought Joe Montana was the GOAT. And arguably, Joe may still be the GOAT because Joe played in a different era. Uh, uh, the 1980s and probably the early 1990s, there was very little free agency. Right now, we're in an era in the NFL of free agency where players can sign with different teams if they feel like it when their initial contract is up. And teams can be built pretty much through free agency in addition to the draft. But in the 1980s, those Bill Walsh 49ers teams, that Mike Ditka Chicago Bears team, that the Bill Parcells New York Giants teams, those teams were built through the draft and probably a timely trade here or there. So Joe Montana played in a very different era. But in the Brady Six, and I left the Brady Six, which is one of my favorite documentaries, it's dedicated to Tom Brady and the 6 quarterbacks who were drafted ahead of him, and Drew Henson. In the Brady Six, it says that he, I think, went to Sarah High School in Northern California. He grew up watching the 49ers, but he wasn't that well recruited coming out of high school. So nobody, he wasn't that blue chip phenom quarterback like J.J. McCarthy or Peyton Manning or Quinn Ewers. Shout out to Buckeye Alex. Tom Brady wasn't that guy. So he pretty much flew under the radar. And someone on Lloyd Carr, well, let's get Lloyd Carr and Brady Hoke in here. Someone on this coaching staff, one of Abdul Gaines' favorite head coaches here, someone on this coaching staff saw something in him and decided to give him a scholarship. So Tom flew from the West Coast to the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and he became a Michigan Wolverine. And according to the Brady Six, he didn't have the mentality of, I'm going to come in and just wait my turn to play. He wanted to play right away. He wanted to challenge Brian Griese for his starting spot. And apparently in the Brady Six, there's a story where Lloyd Carr says Tom came into his office, slammed his hand on the table and said, I'm going to start for you. I'm going to be the Michigan starter. So I'm going to take a quick look back at Tom's statistics at Michigan, and I'm going to talk about how he did at Michigan, and then I'm going to talk about my first year as a graduate student at Michigan, which was Tom's senior year. So let's take a quick look at Tom's stats when he was a Michigan Wolverine. So that's the NFL. Yeah, and this is all online. So Tom was he was a 4-year guy for the Wolverines. So he got there in 1996. As you can see, he played in 2 games, threw no touchdowns, 1 interception, and he had a passer rating of 63.7. The 1997 season, that was the national championship season where Michigan went, was it 12-0 or 13-0? They beat Washington State in the Rose Bowl. And then back then there was no BCS, there was no college football playoff. So the national champion was voted on. And that was the controversy because Michigan finished undefeated and Nebraska finished undefeated. So it wound up being a split. But the net of it for this is, as you can see on that team, Tom played in 4 games, threw for no touchdowns. He completed 12 passes, and he had a passer rating of 137.7 yards. So he was playing behind Brian Griese that season, and he was lower on the depth chart, so he didn't play much. But I think it's valuable that he was on that team. He got to see that. He got to see the preparation. He got to see all of those guys play. Charles Woodson, Ty Streets, Brian Griese, all those guys. He got to see that and absorb that as a sophomore. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. Okay, I'm going to go over your comments in a little bit. If anyone wants to donate to the channel by Cash App or PayPal, I have a small crowd here. That information is here. Now, I was an undergraduate at my HBCU when Michigan won that national title, or that split national title. But I do remember it was a big deal nationally. And so even for those of us looking on from afar, the question was, as is with any championship team, can they do it again? Can they repeat? And one of the things that I saw from afar was that Brian Griese graduated, and now there's this Tom Brady kid stepping in and starting for Brian Griese for the 98 season. So for his junior year, Tom played in 12 games, completed 200 passes, and he had a completion. He had a 62% completion percentage. He threw for 14 touchdowns and threw for 10 interceptions for a quarterback a QB rating of 133.1. And that's interesting because I'm going to pull up the 98 season schedule here. Leading up to this 2021 season, I was, the whole question was, can Michigan beat Ohio State? When were the last times that Michigan beat Ohio State? So I went back and looked at some of the old statistics, and I actually pulled up some of the old Michigan schedules. And on YouTube, I actually pulled up the 1998 Michigan Ohio State game. I'm going to get to that, but this is Tom's junior year. So you see they had an opening season loss at Notre Dame. That was a competitive game back in those days. There was this second loss at the Big House against Donovan McNabb's Syracuse Orangemen. And I remember seeing some highlights of that. I think Donovan got out. He was running around, scrambling, throwing the ball. And this would end up being the bane of existence for Lloyd Carr and his coaching staffs. Mobile quarterbacks who could run. And Donovan McNabb put his skills on display that day. So they defeated the Wolverines 28-38 at the Big House. And then Michigan took care of business. They beat Eastern. Google Chrome is thinking right now. Give me a second. Okay. So they took care of business. They beat Eastern. They beat State. They beat Iowa, Northwestern, Indiana, Minnesota, Penn State, Wisconsin. And then they lost to Ohio State. Then they beat Hawaii. And then they beat Arkansas in looks like the Citrus Bowl. But I did pull that 1998 Ohio State game, and I watched it on YouTube. And I saw something interesting. And that thing was Tom Brady didn't look like Tom Brady. He was, in that game, he was rolling out a lot. He was overthrowing his receivers. He was under duress. It was a bit of a rebuilding year, but he didn't look anything like the Tom Brady I saw when I got to Ann Arbor the next season. And I think this is significant because I think it shows that even the great players, they have to get out there and play at some point. They have to make some mistakes. They have to have their own growing pains. And I think that junior year is what that was for Tom Brady. He didn't look like the same quarterback, and I think that's he hadn't played. He had to get out there and hit his head and get sacked and get his jersey dirty. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was worth noting. So they lost to Ohio State that year, 31-16. So the next year, I get to Ann Arbor, my first year of graduate school, and let's take a quick look at Tom's senior year stats first before we go through the season. So if you look at Tom's senior year, he played in 11 games, completed 180 of 180 passes of 295 completions. He threw for 16 touchdowns, and he threw 4 less interceptions for a quarterback rating of 138. So he had a little bit of a better year. But so those are his stats. But what about the intangibles? Let's take a look at the schedule for his senior season. Similar slate of games. This time, and I remember, again, this is my first time in Ann Arbor. Well, this is my first time there as a student. So this is my first football fall. This is my first Big Ten football fall. So Notre Dame was the opening game. And that was a really big deal. There was a really strong buzz around Ann Arbor. Notre Dame's coming. Notre Dame's coming. Notre Dame's coming. Notre Dame started Jarius Jackson, and they were coached by Bob Davie. Really big deal. And also the talk leading up to that game was, who is Lloyd Carr going to start? So, and this is talked about in the Brady Six, Tom's senior year, he didn't automatically get the job because he had number 7, Drew Henson, there competing with him for the starting position. So Drew Henson was a local kid from Brighton, Michigan. Drew Henson was a phenom. He could throw, he could run, he played multiple sports, and he was battling Tom Brady for the job. So when I watched my first Michigan game as a student, as a graduate student, what I saw was that Lloyd Carr, let me show Abdul Gaines' favorite coach again. Lloyd Carr went with the platoon system. So he played Tom Brady for the first quarter, and then he played Drew Henson for the second quarter. And then in the second half, I believe he went with whichever quarterback was hottest. But he had to do that early because Drew Henson was his phenom. And he didn't necessarily want to lose Drew Henson, but he had this senior that had been with him for a number of years, who seemed to know the offense and who seemed to have a leadership prowess. Does any of this sound familiar? Because if what Abdul Gaines says is true about Harbaugh coming back, we're going to see probably the exact same thing in Ann Arbor right now. But they beat Notre Dame 26-22. They blew out Rice in the next game. They went out to the Carrier Dome and beat Syracuse. Donovan McNabb graduated. I believe Troy Nunes took over for him. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Purdue. And then, here we go, the Michigan State game. This is my very first Michigan State game. You guys know who was coaching Michigan State at that time? If you don't know, I'll pull the picture up. It was none other wait for it. Hold on. Coaching Michigan State at that time was none other than Abdul Gaines' favorite other coach, Nick Saban, right? Before he became chef, Nick Saban. And what's funny is back then they had a Northwest Airlines, which got absorbed by Delta. They had a commercial with Lloyd Carr and Nick Saban meeting up in the airport, and it was kind of funny. But it was a monster game. The build up to that game was tremendous. You had the in-state rivalry. Apparently, Michigan had won the previous years leading up, and Michigan State had a really, really good team. They had Bill Burke at quarterback, and one of his main targets was none other than Plaxico Burress, big 6'6", 6'5" Plaxico Burress, who was abusing our defense all game long. All Bill Burke had to do that day was just throw Plaxico Burress open, and he was just leaping up and catching it. Also, they had TJ Duckett. He gashed us on the ground that day. And I remember watching that game. It was a rainy, gray day in East Lansing. Tom got the start. I don't think he put up any points in that first quarter, but Lloyd pulled him to put Drew Henson in. And I remember when that second quarter started, the camera went to Tom Brady, and Tom had his headset on, and he was just kind of standing there looking a little frustrated that he got pulled out, a little frustrated that he wasn't going to play the second quarter. I think Drew threw a touchdown pass in the second quarter, and he also threw a pick at some point, and he got sacked. But I think a quarterback like Tom needed to stay in the game to eventually chip away at that Michigan State defense. And I think that pulling him out after that first quarter disrupted his flow, and it disrupted his ability to start to pick apart that Michigan State defense. And as you can see here, the final score was 31-34. And in the second half, as shown in the Brady 6, Tom did lead Michigan back. We just ran out of time. But and it was after that game, I think, that Lloyd decided that Tom Brady needs to be the starter. So that was a significant game. It was a monster matchup between two in-state rivalries, but Lloyd decided that Tom needed to be the starter after that game, and that's covered in the Brady 6. They lost again the next week at home against Illinois. The Kurt Kittner Illinois Fighting Illini. And then from there, they beat Indiana, they beat Northwestern, they beat Penn State at Penn State, and then they beat Ohio State at home in the Big House, and they edged out Alabama in overtime in the Orange Bowl, I believe. And Tom Brady engineered all of those wins. So he didn't play his first 2 years. He had a mediocre junior year, and then he really, once he became the full-time starter, he really showed his leadership prowess and his ability to play the quarterback position his senior year. Now, I'm not just saying this, but with my limited knowledge of football at that time, in my opinion, I could look and I could say, okay, this guy, he's got that it. This Brady kid, he's got that it. He stands back in the pocket. He's got a nice throw. He's got a nice form. He's poised down the stretch of games. He's not the biggest kid, but he's got that it factor. He's got that thing, and I spotted that early as a Michigan student. And I'm not just patting myself on the back, but it's just a feeling that I had watching him play, watching him command the offense, and those kinds of things. So, as a graduate student, the next year, Tom graduated, Drew Henson took over, and Tom entered the NFL draft. So I remember thinking, let me pull this up really quickly. Thank you for those of you who are hanging on here. The 2000 NFL draft, Tom Brady. I'm going to go for just a little bit longer. You know what? I'll go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not considered a reliable source, but I think, yeah, it'll. Let's see. This is. You know what? I'm not going to find him here. I will show the page. The next year, as a graduate student, I was in my research lab, and I remember thinking, whatever happened to Tom Brady? Where did he go? What happened to the Brady kid? And then I think I might have been between experiments. I was surfing online, looking at ESPN or something, and I saw that he got drafted by the New England Patriots, and I saw that he went in the 6th round. So once again, guys, the Brady 6 is below the stream. If you want to watch it yourself, it's a very good documentary about Tom and the quarterbacks that were drafted ahead of him, Andrew Henson. But I said, okay, he was drafted in the 6th round by the New England Patriots. It's good that he got drafted. He'll probably be a journeyman backup quarterback like Steve Berline or Steve Bono or Jeff Garcia or one of those guys who will spend his career backing up Brett Favre or Troy Aikman or Jim Kelly. In Buffalo, for us, it was Frank Reich. Frank Reich was Jim Kelly's backup for a number of years. He got a chance to start when the Carolina Panthers were created. Then you didn't really hear much from him as a starter. But I said that's probably what Tom Brady will turn into. Fast forward to the 2001 season. The Patriots, Bill Belichick had taken over the Patriots, and Drew Bledsoe was the starting quarterback. It was his team. It was his job. And according to the Brady Six, he took a hit from Mo Lewis from the Jets. He was coughing up blood. And Tom Brady took a hold of the starting quarterback position, and he never let it go afterwards. And so that's why I started this live stream out talking about competition. And when you join a team, are you there to sit and learn, or are you there to actually take the job from the guy who has the job? Because that's what Tom did. Unlike the guys, if you guys watch the Brady Six, all the guys who were drafted ahead of Tom, I'm going to run off some names just off my memory. Giovanni Carmazzi, T. Martin, who took over for Peyton Manning at Tennessee, Chris Redman, was Tim Couch in there? I think one of the Cincinnati quarterbacks was in there. There was another there were two other kids who were taken, but those guys were thrown in right away. They were thrown in onto the field right away, and for the most part, rookie quarterbacks, I think, are better off sitting a year and studying. Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, they got thrown out there right away. They did pretty well. But most rookie quarterbacks, when they're thrown out there in the NFL right away, they struggle. And so all those guys on the Brady Six, all those guys who were drafted ahead of Tom, they got out there and most of them got crushed. But Tom, because he got drafted and he had to play under Drew Bledsoe, he got to sit for 1 to 2 years, study the offense, figure it out. And so when he finally got out there, we got what we got. I'm going to read some comments here. Let's see. J Bone says, I remember that. Really big bro. This might be a reference to our age difference. Drew Henson was a great quarterback. You know what, J Bones? Let's talk about Drew Henson for a second. When Drew Henson took over his junior year, he broke his ankle, I think, in training camp. So he was out for the first 2 to 3 weeks. But when Drew got in there, you could see the talent, you could see the throwing ability, you could see the running ability. And against Ohio State that year, because Drew is the last Michigan quarterback to win at the Horseshoe. Cade McNamara is the last Michigan quarterback to beat Ohio State, but Drew Henson is the last Michigan quarterback to win down in the Horseshoe. And if you watch that game, you could see all of Drew's skills. He was running, he was throwing, he was doing everything. But there were a few games that season that Michigan lost, and you didn't see that same leadership prowess that Tom Brady had his senior year. Maybe Drew would have shown that had he come back for his senior year, but I'm saying that he showed all the talent, he showed all the measurables, but there was something missing. And he might have grown into that his senior year had he come back. A lot of Michigan fans feel like he screwed us because he left to go play for the Yankees. But anyway, so Tom Brady. So Tom finally got his chance to start. I'm going to wrap this up soon, guys. I had the Patriots up here somewhere. Let me find it again because I'm going to walk through these really, really quickly. Super Bowl appearances. I was looking at this earlier, and it is amazing how many times the Patriots, I already had it up. It is amazing how many times the Patriots went to the Super Bowl. It's amazing when you look at all those years. Okay. So we'll just walk through these pretty quickly. So Super Bowl, geez, I can't read those Roman numerals. But the Rams. Tom took over for Drew Bledsoe that season after Drew Bledsoe got smashed by Mo Lewis. And it's unfortunate sometimes to see athletes and quarterbacks lose their positions due to injury. But that's an unfortunate part of sports. There can only be one quarterback who plays at one time. Um, and that's how Tom got the job. But Tom was so prepared and so driven that he didn't let go of the job once he got it. So the Patriots, they were one of the playoff teams in the AFC. They marched through arguably the one of the more controversial calls, or the call that set everything up, was the fumble against the Raiders, which was called a forward pass. I think that gave rise to the Tuck rule, but that set the Patriots up to go to the Super Bowl. They beat Pittsburgh after that, and they got in there. And I remember this might have been my second or third year of grad school. We watched it. I watched it at a house with a bunch of classmates, not far from Michigan Stadium. And I was thinking, the Patriots aren't going to win this. They're playing the greatest show on turf Rams. There's no way they're going to win this. Kurt Warner, they're going to get out there and blow the Patriots out. But the Patriots kept the game close. Tom was poised, and they got the ball back on that last drive. Their defense did just enough to slow the Rams down. Their offense came to play. They didn't turn the ball over. And on that last drive, instead of going for overtime, I think they were tied. Tom drove the team right down for the winning field goal, and they upset the Rams. We never heard from the Rams again. I think Kurt Warner's career was never the same after that. And that was Super Bowl number one. I just remember the Patriots being very aggressive. I thought they were going to get steamrolled. And they were just very aggressive. Tom wasn't afraid of the big stage. He wasn't afraid of the Rams. And I remember him throwing a touchdown to David Patton right there, right before halftime. So that was Super Bowl number one in New Orleans, I believe. Super Bowl number two, their second Super Bowl, they won that 2017. Tom went 16 for 27 for 145 yards and one touchdown. He had 86.2 rating. Their second Super Bowl was against the Carolina Panthers. Excuse me. The Panthers seemed to come out of nowhere that season. They upset the Philadelphia Eagles and got to the Super Bowl. They didn't do much early on, but the Panthers eventually made it a game, and the Patriots escaped with the 32-29 victory. Tom went 32 for 48 for 345 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Championship windows. I might have been talking about this here or on another channel, but basically, I was talking about my book project. Every team has a window, right? And that was, since I was just talking about the Carolina Panthers, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Donovan McNabb Philadelphia Eagles, they had a window they had a number of years where they were consistently in the NFC Championship game. They got through to the Super Bowl once. But each of those other years, they were upset by another team in the NFC. And Carolina never made it back to that level themselves. Okay. Speaking of the Eagles, the next foe for the Patriots was the Donovan McNabb Philadelphia Eagles with Terrell Owens at wide receiver. Terrell Owens battled back from breaking his ankle. Terrell Owens didn't play the entire playoffs, but he got himself back for the Super Bowl and played his butt off. And yes, Donovan McNabb seemed to get tired during the Super Bowl, which was a controversy afterwards. But the Patriots did enough and pulled that one out 24-21. What are you guys noticing about the scores in terms of the Patriots' victories in the Super Bowl? They're all by like 3 points or less. And I noticed that throughout the years as they kept winning. They never beat anyone decisively. They always squeaked their victories out in the Super Bowl. In that game, Tom went 23 for 33 for 236 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions for a 110.2 QB rating. The Patriots won that one 24-21. Here we go. Tom's first Super Bowl loss. This was the 2008 season, so they'd gone a number of years without going to the Super Bowl until Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft started retooling the roster, and they signed Randy Moss, and they pretty much demolished every team in their way. And they had their eyes set on going undefeated, which is hard to do, surpassing the 72 Miami Dolphins. And that's what they had their eyes set on. They almost did it. But they fell short. And here's why. What was interesting about that was that they became pretty much that season. Bill Belichick seemed to abandon his New York Giants roots. The New York Giants were a running team under Bill Parcells. The passing game was set up by the running game. With Randy Moss and Tom Brady and those other targets, they became exclusively a passing team with very little running game. And I think that was tailor-made for that New York Giants defense, who they had beat earlier in the regular season. So you had Michael Strahan and Justin Tuck. And I think was Jason Pierre-Paul a part of that that defensive line. In any case, the Giants' specialty was the pass rush. And if you're going to drop the quarterback back for long developing routes, you're going to leave him as a sitting duck for those pass rushers, for those talented pass rushers. And that's what happened. The Patriots in that game were just never able to get enough separation from the Giants to blow them out. It was close. The Giants offense played above itself. Eli connected with Plexico Burris several times, and he made that sick throw to what's the guy's name? Caught the ball on the side of his helmet. I can't think of the guy's name. It was on Rodney Harrison. If you guys can think of the guy's name who made that sick catch, Eli got away from the rush, and he just threw the Hail Mary, and the guy caught it on the side. David Tyree. It was David Tyree. So the Giants got that prayer, and then it was just a simple throw to Plexico Burris for the game-winning touchdown. But the point is, the Patriots were never able to establish that dominant passing game that they showed throughout the regular season. And I think we also saw that even with a quarterback of Tom Brady's caliber, if he gets hit enough, if he gets rushed enough, if he gets knocked down enough, that will affect his play. And I think we saw that in that game. So this was their first Super Bowl loss. So they had a rematch a few years later. That was here. I was here in the DMV when this happened against the New York Giants. So Randy Moss is gone, and now you have little wide receivers like Julian Edelman and Wes Welker running around with Ron Gronkowski, and for that season, Aaron Hernandez. And I think Gronk got hurt in that Super Bowl, right? I think if he was healthy for the entire game, that would have given the Patriots the advantage. I remember Aaron Hernandez dropping a ball late in the game. I remember Wes Welker dropping a ball late in the game that would have given the Patriots the first down and sealed the game, but the ball went through his fingers. Eli Manning made a sick completion to Mario Manningham on the sidelines. Mario Manningham went to Michigan, but it was another destiny game that seemed to just get away from the Patriots. So they lost that one 21-17. Tom went 27 for 41 for 276 yards, 2 TDs, and 1 interception. Right. So the Patriots weren't invincible. Tom wasn't invincible. Their next victory came against the Seattle Seahawks. And I thought that this is another game that almost got away from the Patriots. Russell Wilson made a sick throw and catch to one of his wide receivers late in the game. The guy caught the ball on his back on the carpet. And when he caught that, I said, this is all right. The Patriots are going to lose this one just like they lost the Giants games. But it came down to a play at the goal line. Many of us think if Pete Carroll or whoever was calling the plays had just handed the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, the Seahawks would have punched the ball in the end zone and gave the Patriots their third Super Bowl loss. But someone on that sideline thought it would be a good idea to drop Russell Wilson back and throw the ball at the goal line. And of course, Malcolm Jenkins stepped in front, intercepted the ball, and saved that victory for Tom and Bill Belichick. My dad says that was pass interference. I thought it wasn't. I thought you handed the ball off to Marshawn Lynch for a sure first down and a touchdown. So the Patriots won that game 28-24. Tom went 37 for 50 for 328 yards, 4 TDs, and 1 interception for a 101 rating. So, again, the Patriots turned into more of a passing team than a running team, which was odd for me to see since Bill Belichick came from the Bill Parcells camp. This was a head scratcher. The Patriots pulled out this one against the Falcons. Julio Jones made a sick catch. I think in the second half, the Falcons were up big, and they just froze in the second half, and the Patriots battled all the way back. I was sitting here in my unit watching this. I thought it was over. The Patriots battled all the way back to win that game 34-28. Tom went 43 for 62 for 466 yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception for a 95.2 rating. And the Falcons never got back to the Super Bowl after that. So that was a crushing loss for them. The Eagles. The Patriots lost this one 41-33. Tom went 28 for 48 for 505 yards, 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions for a rating of 115.4. And again, when I was watching this game, no running game. The Patriots had become exclusively a passing team, which is surprising based upon where Bill Belichick came from in terms of his roots. The play of the game, the Patriots had a chance to, I think, tie the game or drive the ball down the field for a tie or the go-ahead touchdown. Brandon Graham from the University of Michigan, I think, either batted the ball down or sacked Tom Brady which pretty much ended the game. So this was their third Super Bowl loss. The Rams, they pulled it out against the Rams. 13-3, low-scoring game, not very exciting. Brady went 21 for 35 for 262 yards, 0 interceptions. I'm sorry, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception for a rating of 71.3. And then finally, those were the Patriots Super Bowls. All of this was done. I'm almost done, guys. All this was done using the Bill Belichick model. And the Bill Belichick model was basically keeping players until you could see that they were pretty much almost done and then cutting them. That he kept Tom for what, 20, 21 years and just cycled in players around Tom over and over and over and over again. And I think that when Tom got up in age, Bill and Bob Kraft said, okay, well, Tom, now it's your turn. We're not going to re-sign you. We don't want to give you a huge extension. We don't really care if you finish your career here. And that's when Tom went to Tampa Bay. I'm going to wrap this up shortly. Yeah. And that's when Tom went to Tampa Bay. The 2020 season, the COVID season, Gronk followed him out, and they won one more Super Bowl together over the Kansas City Chiefs. And then this last season, I don't know. Tom played 17 games. They had injuries. They had a Antonio Brown meltdown on the sidelines. And at the end, Tom himself just looked a little tired. At the end, Tom just looked a little worn out himself. They got beaten by the Rams in the divisional round. And that was it. That was his career. That was about, what, 23 years? And all for a kid who got drafted in the 6th round, who wasn't the unanimous starter in college, and who had 6 quarterbacks drafted ahead of him. So I consider Tom Brady to be the GOAT. You could argue it's Joe Montana. Tom has the most rings. Tom has been to the Super Bowl the most. Played longer than Joe. But I don't think you can argue that Tom isn't the GOAT. I don't think, with everything he's done, everything he's accomplished, I think people started rooting against him toward the end. Whenever you have a team that's winning all the time, you saw this with Michael Jordan. You saw this with the Dallas Cowboys. I think when a team just keeps winning over and over and over again, people just get tired of seeing them win and want to see someone else win. So I think that went against Tom. I think Tom's political affiliation soured some people on him. The fact that he was down with number 45. But you can't argue with his accomplishments on the football field. Did pretty well in the dating world as well. I think his first child was from Bridget Moynihan. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bridget Moynihan, but in her day, she was pretty hot. And then he married Giselle. So guys, I just wanted to do a quick, an hour long look back and tribute to Tom Brady. I thought that he had that it. I thought that, with my limited football knowledge, when I got to the University of Michigan as a graduate student, from what I saw that first year, which was Tom's senior year, I thought that he was I wouldn't say a great quarterback, but I thought he could play the position. And I thought that he should play on Sundays. And it turned out to be his competitive spirit and his tenacity that was the difference maker, I think, throughout his career. It was what allowed him to win the job at Michigan over Drew Henson, and I think that it's what made him prepared in New England when Drew Bledsoe got hurt, because he could have easily just prepared enough and done enough just to get in there to not win games. But Tom was prepared to take the position, to keep the position, not give it back. And Tom was prepared to win once he got a chance to play. So anyhow, thank you to those of you who hung out here in the chat. If you're watching on the playback, please let me know about your Tom Brady memories / reflections and thoughts. If you're watching on the playback and you want to throw something in the tip jar, that information is below this video. Please consider signing up for the Big Words LLC newsletter. And yeah, I think I'll wrap this up. Please like, share, subscribe. Go Blue. At the beginning of this stream, Abdul Gaines said Harbaugh has opted to stay in Ann Arbor. I don't know if he was just trolling us, but I'm going to take a look at my smartphone afterwards to see if that was accurate. Hopefully it is. So go Blue. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Whatever happens, whether Jim is staying or whether he's going, I will do something about it here on Big Discussions 76 Sports. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your night, and I will talk to you the next time. All right. Bye-bye.